Hey everyone, I'm Andrew Hall, and this is Dead Hand Radio. This episode is titled UFOs and Nukes, The Real Threat. My guests are physics teacher Richard Howe, podcaster and experiencer Jamie Ray, UFO researcher and podcaster The Undead Gaucho. All three of these guys have been on this show previously and are well respected in their areas of study. And for this topic, they bring a diverse and unique perspective to the conversation. Thank you all for being here, and welcome to Dead Hand Radio, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Thanks, man. Hello.
So just real quick for each of you, John is a podcaster and a UFO researcher, and he's been studying the topic for years. I'm not sure exactly how long, but he'll give that information a little bit. Richard is the physics teacher, and Jamie is a podcaster and a resident of Louisiana. That's strange and unusual in itself.
I was going to say, one of these things is not like the other, but I'm glad to be here.
So let's start off real quick. Richard, if you could just give a little quick background and what are your interests and how did you get interested in those?
Yep. So, hi, my name is Richard Howe. I've spent 22 years in the Royal Air Force and the military. I've had an interest in nuclear weapons ever since I was younger, and we've discussed that last time. And it's more or less the horrific beauty of the nuclear weapon I really like. I've also got involved with the UFO side of it. Bit for me probably was the Rendlesham Forest in 1980, which pretty much everybody knows around the world as the UK's own little Roswell. So, yeah, that's my side of things from me.
Jamie, go ahead and give a real quick intro of yourself, how you got into podcasting and why you have an interest in UFOs.
Well, I got into podcasting actually right before Corona hit, and it's been a lifeline for me. I've always liked to talk about different things with different people, so I started a show called Fave 5 from Fans, where I bring a friend of mine, generally one who knows more about a subject than I do, and then we make a list of 5 of our favorites and then compare them 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I really love the show because it is the ability to compare things, not necessarily by the cinematography or the writing or anything else like that. It's about how it makes you feel and why it's your favorite. And it goes to movies and TVs and books and toys and anything that goes in. And it's opened me up to Andrew and all of my other brothers on the Slightly Regular Podcast Network. And it's opened up 2 more shows that I'm doing now. One is called Complete Disarray with Jamie Ray, where we just grab a subject and talk about
Uh-oh, Jamie just got dropped. But what, so let me get him back in here. So you got dropped for some reason, Jamie, but what is your, what about your interest in UFOs? How long has that been going on?
Oh, since I was a kid, obviously the TV shows and all the movies, but I had a grandmother, and I will probably get into that, who firmly believed and shared with us her belief in her experiences, things that she had seen, and it's just always something that's fascinating. I mean, to think that we are not the only thing is so incredibly absurd. So I'm very interested to hear from these 2 guys who actually know what they're talking about.
Cool. With that, John, can you give us a little background and why you got interested in UFOs?
Yeah, well, I have a YouTube channel. I create content. I am I would say an amateur filmmaker, and I enjoy this topic. It's been something that's been with me since the beginning of I would say my existence, since I could think. It's been something I've been really interested in, and I would say that for the last 15 years, maybe, let's give myself a little credit there. When I was a teenager, I started really focusing on it and looking into cases and different things. And yeah, I think that the UFO topic is important. I think that it could change the past and the future, and it's something that we should all be talking about. So,
Right on. And I've watched your show for a while. I don't even know, but so Jamie, when does your show air so that if people want to catch it?
Well, I've had a string of bad luck lately, so usually it's every other Friday,
Okay.
and we'll be starting up coming this Friday with the Phase 5 Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes,
Cool.
and that'll be a four-person panel. So it's interesting how little and how much crossover we have for it. And
Hmm.
then Complete Disarray comes out probably the week after that. It's very spotty. And then we're hoping Hitchcock. It's a show called Hanging with Hitch, where a friend of mine and I will watch every Hitchcock movie, and we'll record all of our comments, and it'll kind of be like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 type thing, and that'll
Cool.
be spotty too. But if you go to fave5fromfans.com on the web, and fave the number 5 from fans on Twitter, you can find everything that's going on about my life, except for usually the food that I eat. Don't post pictures of that. So
All right,
please, if
and
you like it, enjoy it, share it, let your friends know.
yeah, for sure, for sure, it's a good show. It's a lighthearted, upbeat kind of a show that talks about some cool stuff.
I
And
appreciate it. It's always something different.
so, John, what about your show? Do you have a set schedule when you air your lives? You usually do live streams,
I
right?
I used to do live streams on Wednesdays. I do create content on the side. I really enjoy, like I said, amateur filmmaker. I put myself in that area because I don't want to say I'm a filmmaker. But I enjoy creating content. I can put it out when I can, but like Jamie just said, sometimes things get a little bit in the way. So recently, the lives have been a little. Um, I think the last 2 months I haven't been able to go live on Wednesdays. I'm changing it to Fridays, but there's not really a set schedule at the moment. I'm trying to get back on a rhythm or a flow to get it out there. Because if not, I'm not going to be able to really have a good conversation with anybody if I'm thinking about all the normal things normal people think about all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen, brother.
Totally get
Yeah.
that, man. Yeah, it's great to hear your take on things, and I really dig the way you do your show because it's a conversation between you and whoever's uh, interested in chiming in. And oh, cool, we just got a message from the Unidentified Celebrity Review. That's Luis Jimenez over there,
Hi,
who
Luis.
does the big phone
Right.
home, doing a great job. Thanks for being here, Star Alley Mistral. Um, oh, she's from Las Vegas. Cool.
Ah,
Thanks for joining us, guys.
thank you.
Um, so today we are here to talk about. First of all, I want to get your take on this preliminary assessment, unidentified aerial phenomena that just dropped. And before you guys do that, if anybody's looking for this report, uh, John Greenwald of the Black Vault put a link on his website. If you're having trouble finding it, just go to his website. He's got tons of information out there. The link will also be down in the show notes after this episode airs. But the much anticipated report is finally out, and many in the UFO community are disappointed, and for good reason. While reactions by researchers have been varied, one really stood out for me. In a Twitter post, Robert Salas states his absolute disgust with the DNI report and the exclusion of anything related to nukes. This reminded me of why I became interested in the UFO topic to begin with. But when I mentioned this to another researcher, their response was, does Salas have access to the classified version of the report? And I thought that was a really good question. But it also illustrates how whitewashed the public report is. The report tries to make a case for a UFO threat, but it's just not there. And it's got me thinking about the real threat. So I gathered some friends and we decided to talk about UFOs and nukes and examine the real threat. So, Jamie, real quick, if you've had a chance to read the report or kind of briefly look over it, what are your initial thoughts on it?
Well, Okay, and I'm always trying to look, but I don't know how much this report cost, but I could have taken $10,000 and given you the same answer that these guys gave you. And I know I don't nearly know as much as you got, but to think that the government would have actually acknowledged the fact that there was something out there with the overwhelming evidence that out there. If you really thought something else was going to be happening, I'm sorry, but I mean, even I knew when I heard before it was coming out. Oh, well, they're going to find nothing. There's nothing to prove, because nothing happened.
Yeah.
And the fact that they actually did put it out is a good step, I would think, going forward to say that, okay, we do know that there are these things out there that we can't explain. And now, I don't know, maybe the next 10 years we'll get something out of it. But I never really expected there to be anything of any substance there at all.
So, John, I want to get to you, but I want to get Richard into the conversation because it's been a little bit since he said anything. Was there anything in the report, Richard, that you read that stood out to you, and what's your overall outlook on the report?
Well, from my side of it, I did look through it, and I think the way when I was on your last edition, when I was on with you, I said to you at the time that they were only going to let you see what they want you to see at the end of the day, and they will just basically dangle the carrot in front of you to give you just enough to sort of whet your appetite, and that will be it. And it's like I said earlier on, some of the terminology they've used I think is quite interesting, like the airborne clutter. That kind of ticks almost every single box you could have probably. And the other one I like is the anything else bin at the bottom, which is the stuff they can't really talk about. But at the end of the day, what they've done is dangled a carrot. And I'm sure there probably is another report that's probably highly confidential and probably secret, but they're not going to issue that unless they want you to see it.
Okay, John. So give
That's
us
what I think.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. That's a great assessment. Give us your thoughts on it and a little bit more of a detailed breakdown, because you look into this stuff a lot more than these other two guys, and I think you have a really good grasp of the community, and how the community has responded. So talk a little bit about that as well as your overall assessment.
Well, the beautiful thing about it is that Jamie and Richard both said the things that they should have said. They both sort of approached this and said, they didn't go like, oh, I hated it, it was horrible, it was terrible. They both kind of pointed out what were the negatives, what were the positives. And I am not someone that was believing that there was going to be crashed UFOs in this report or alien bodies. I was totally somebody. I actually got a little quiet. I was telling you a minute ago, I'm trying to figure out how to get my flow back, because when I knew the report was coming out, people started just talking and talking and talking and talking. And I was going, I think I got to sit back and kind of read the room and see what's going to happen for a minute and just kind of get my mind settled and leveled and understand where we're going to go forward from this. And the report was 9 pages long. I will tell you honestly, I was one of the first people to say, wow, I could have written a high school book report longer, or a science project report that would have been longer. And it's actually not even 9 pages. It's like 6 pages, because the first page is the title and the last page and the last 2 pages are the appendix. So most of the information in there is a little bit regurgitated. But what I did last night is I went live. I said, you know what? I'm going to go live. I'm going to go live tonight. I took the report and I read the report word by word with everybody on the live, even though a lot of them had already read it. I'm sure everybody in the community read it. But I was like, let's just read it again and see if we can pick anything out from it. I like how you brought up they brought up birds and plastic bags in the report as possible things that could mess up radar data or be confused or sort of, clutter things up. And I was like, birds and bags. And I was having a hard time going through it, but there are a bit of pieces in there that are a little bit of gold nuggets if you look and pay attention to it. My thing was, this is not going to be like disclosure, what people think disclosure should be, where they think somebody's just going to come out and say, hey, UFOs and aliens, yeah, here's the bodies from Roswell. That's not what this is going to be, because they can never do that. And the government doesn't do that. The government will never do that. Think about any topic ever handled by a government. They never completely tell you the truth. That's just the way it works. It's like having parents. Your parents might say, hey, don't touch the fire, but they're not going to pull you aside and show you a bunch of slides of burn victims and show you how fire affects the human body and how that's just the way the government works. And I'm not a huge patriot, or, I'm not I believe in the government. I think that it could be positive and it could help people. But from what I've seen, at least for the last 30 years I've been alive, which is not long. And imagine if it's not long and I'm telling you this, imagine what other people feel like that have been alive longer than me. I can't trust the government that much. And I knew this was going to be sort of whitewashed, but it's for the suits, right? And they need a book report. They don't need what I need. I want to see the alien bodies. I want to see the crash craft. I want to see all that stuff. But what they need is a 7-page report saying it might be birds, it might be bags, but you know what? At the moment, it's not foreign adversaries, and it's not some tech that we have. And the question that I keep laughing at is when they come back, the suits, and they go, so if it's not bags, it's not birds, it's not foreign adversaries, then what is it? Is it extraterrestrial? And the conversation we're having right now, it's like we're all walking on a tight wire. Like the people that believe in UFOs and believe in this topic, we've got to this point where we're like, don't say anything that's going to, turn people away from this topic. Don't scare them. Don't talk about abductions. Don't talk about all the crazy experiences that we've read about or that we've heard about, because
the
they can't be.
The UFOs flying around our nuclear arsenals.
Exactly. The UFOs.
That's a scary thought. Yeah.
There was also the part in the report, which I thought was interesting because I thought about it a few times, when people say that there are more sightings around these Navy ships and, like military, I'm
assets.
losing the word here, military assets and stuff like that. They were saying like, oh yeah, maybe they're interested in that. And then they brought up in the report, which I thought was fascinating. They said, well, there are more sensors and more ways for them to like track these things and see these things in those areas. So maybe it's just that, maybe it's just that they're actually paying attention to it. And I was like, yeah.
Hold up right there, man, because you that's a good point. And
Good point.
I had not thought about this, but do you think that because if the UFOs know that we have those sensors in those areas, are they showing up in those areas to kind of say, here we are, take a look at us, we're here, and we know what you're up to? And they're letting themselves be seen through those sensors?
I really think this is going to sound a little negative, but I think they don't really care if we see them or not. I think they're like, we've been doing this for years, for thousands of years. We've been doing this, not even 70 years. It's like, if you just look at this, Andrew, I talk about this all the time. If you look at human history and you try to just look at any of the so-called, the Greek gods, the gods from around the world, any sort of context, any sort of explanation there, the ancient astronaut theory and hypothesis is better said, not theory, has been, talked about for many years, and people look at it like, oh yeah, that sounds a little crazy. Aliens are the gods. And I'm like, it's kind of crazy to think that the gods are the gods without thinking that they're aliens. It's not to step on anybody's toes or to say that religion isn't important. I think religion is very important. It gives you a sense of culture and life, and it gives you a little bit of understanding of how to live your life. But even that understanding of how to live your life, you start to think about it, who gives us an understanding about how to live life as humans? Maybe it's this phenomenon for some reason. It's kind of crazy to think about, but that was a great question.
So Jamie, I saw you put your hand up when John was talking about these UFOs don't really care. They're kind of indifferent to humans. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I totally agree with you. And John, one of the things that's always been in my mind is when you go back and look at the Incan hieroglyphics, the Egyptians, and you see these things. To me, it's like trying to explain a cell phone to somebody from 1880. I mean, in 100 years, there's a technology no one even imagined could happen. And so you think about thousands of years ago and something happened, and let's just, for the sake of the conversation, say it was a UFO. How are you going to explain what that thing is in a way for somebody else to understand it? So I totally believe in my heart that we are visited and with people who don't care if we see. Maybe they want to be seen. This whole theory where they're showing up around, nuclear assets and stuff. It could go either way. It could be, hey, benevolent humans, please don't cause war. Or, hey, that's a cute little thing. Try to shoot that out into space and we'll show you what we can really do type
Can
situation.
I throw an idea out there real quick
Yes,
while
sir.
we're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that,
sure.
the
Go for
nuclear weapons? So I've looked into like certain cases where people claim to have come into close contact with these craft, right? And they get burns on their bodies, or they get sick and they lose hair. And when I looked into radiation poisoning and kind of what happens when you get, like, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to be able to give a good approach to this, but maybe you guys will understand from a basic route. And then you hear these conversations or these stories about the 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 occupants of these craft or these aliens saying that we shouldn't use nuclear weapons. What if somehow, some way, they are using some kind of nuclear technology or something like that, right, for their craft? And that's why these people are getting like radiation poisonings or something, right, from that context. And the reason why they don't want us to keep creating these bombs or experimenting with this stuff is because that is a like a catalyst to get us closer to that kind of technology, which would then catch us up to have that technology that they have. That's just a thought experiment. I don't want you guys to think that I'm like riding on this idea. It's just something I thought about once, and I was like,
No, it's good.
maybe.
But so with the idea of, the question I posed was if if these things know that we have sensors in those sensitive areas and they're showing up there just to show themselves and let us know that they're there on a massive scale. What about the thought? What are your ideas? And I'll go to Richard for this one. If these things wanted to communicate with us and they don't really know how, they don't speak our language, they don't really maybe understand how we communicate with each other. So, what are your thoughts? Do you think this could potentially be a way for them to be communicating with us?
Possibly, yes, but it's like I said before. If you've got a race of whatever, and I do believe there's something out there, it's an awful waste of space if there isn't. Okay, but if you've got the technology and the wherewithal to actually build a spaceship that can travel the distances, are you really going to be interested in a backwater planet who's basically got firecrackers? Because those firecrackers will be the biggest thing we have, but it ain't going to be the biggest thing they have. So are they really interested? And quite possibly, yeah, that could be an advertisement to say, hi, we're here. But will we understand it? Possibly not. Again, you go down the whole route of the Voyager spacecraft and SETI sending the signals out from Arecibo. It's all the mathematics of science and maths, which apparently, well, one of Einstein's things was, it's the same in all parts of the universe. So what's the same here will be the same somewhere else. So yeah, if they're trying to talk with us, it could be a scientific way we don't know about yet. But obviously,
So a couple
we're going to be
things.
behind that.
A couple of.
Let me say something real quick, Rick.
I will, Jamie. I'll get to you. I'll get to you real quick, but I want to add a caveat to it.
Okay.
The idea that these beings are coming from millions of or billions of light years away is one hypothesis. But what if they're already here? And so, with that in mind, Jamie, and respect to, are they communicating with us? And from what Richard said, are they indifferent to us? Do they care about us? Well, why do our scientists study ants or molecules, right? So, why wouldn't they have an interest in us? Jamie, what is your response to that?
Well, I was going to say to Richard, there's a whole industry of people who want to rough it and get away from all of the technology and stuff that we have here. So my thought is that Earth would be kind of one of those destinations where, hey, come back and see how primitive people live in their, fossil fuel powered vehicles, and stuff like that. And also, Andrew, to what you just said, we always talk about learning about the future by learning about our history. And not that we maybe share a genetic, you know, biology with them, but we do look at ants, we do look at monkeys, we do and look for the comparisons of how they are to our lives. So I definitely think that when we're being visited, it's an interest. I don't think it would be that they're at all worried about us and about what we could do to them. Because if you do have the technology to fly as far as, I mean, the closest, star system's got to be, I'm sure Richard knows, years and years and years for us to get to. And these ships are not generational ships. When they show up, these are smaller, crafts that are just going to tool around. So I do think it's probably some type of scientists or some type of, honestly, vacationers who would want to come here and see
That's
what it's
that's
like.
an interesting thought. So if they're on vacation, then they're definitely going to want to see the local wildlife, right?
Exactly. Like what's that black and white thing that gives out milk?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we, as a group, always seem to not miss, but give very little attention to, is we're looking up in the skies, but there's so much under the water. And if those ships are structured enough to go through the space, they can be going underwater and they can be spending all of this time down there. Interesting,
100%.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So John, I was looking at the comments, and one of the comments stood out to me, and this is, oh darn it, sorry, it was ethereal aura. If you're a U.S. citizen, contact your reps and ask to declassify older cases. U.S. can't keep everything classified forever, which is absolutely imperative that people continue to stay engaged with Congress. Um, so you live in, is it Peru?
No, Argentina.
Argentina. I'm sorry, John.
Yeah.
But are you familiar with what the government is doing in Argentina about this topic?
We do have a group that is dedicated to looking into unidentified aerial phenomenon, and it's been quite a while since this existed. I think when the last president came around, it sort of shut down, and I was under the impression that it shut down. And I found out just a few months ago that it hadn't shut down, just to show you how much my focus is on, the congressional hearings and the UAP report and everything. So there is groups here too. Like I think there's one called Sephora, and there's this Andrea Simonetti. She's a woman that's the head of it, and the UFO topic here is talked about, not in the news. It still has stigma, like everywhere, because nobody wants to talk about little green men or UFOs or aliens. They'll talk about UFOs now, but they won't talk about aliens, right? Everyone's like, oh, wait, an alien, an extraterrestrial. One thing to say about Jamie, what Jamie was saying earlier is, I brought this up a few times already. I brought it up on my live. I brought it up with another discussion yesterday. It's something I actually shared with my mother. We were talking about the UFO report, and I said, look, how long does this phenomenon have to be here and interact with us for it to still be considered alien? When you think about she laughed and she said, "Oh yeah, it's just how they call us all illegal aliens when you're, a foreigner to a country or an immigrant or something." And for me, I think the phenomenon's been here forever, right? If you just pay attention a little bit, you see it. You just have to look and kind of notice it, and you'll see it. And I think it may not be alien. I think what Jamie said about the water and them hiding under the water, I don't even know if they hide under the water. Maybe that's just where they go. Maybe for them, that's just like where they hang out. And I saw Richard shaking his head because look, the ocean, Richard, you would probably agree with me, is super vast, super open, and we know, I think, more about space really than we do about the ocean.
Definitely.
It's about 5% of the ocean we know about, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So why not? I mean, it's just logical. There's so many questions that come into play here with this topic, but then which I think people should like power on and stride on is sometimes humans ask too many questions. They think about stuff way too much, right? So if there is something like this happening and they needed to go somewhere where we couldn't see them, the ocean is like the first place to go. And even me, not being a genius or a brilliant man, I would be like, if I had a UFO, I'd be like, okay, well, now I got to go in the ocean and hang out because I know I can. So we're going to sit in this craft all day anyway, so let's just go in the ocean. It's fine. They won't see us there because they don't even really pay attention to it. But yeah, I don't know. So I got off on a tangent, but
that's okay, man. Tangents are encouraged on this, So, but there's some good comments in the chat that I wanted to mention. Harbinger says, if they've deleted Elizondo's emails and data, what's to say they haven't been doing that to other UFO information?
Oh, they definitely have.
Agreed.
You guys know about Richard Doty?
Richard Doty?
Richard Jamie? Yeah, Richard Doty. He basically worked for the government, and his task was to sort of confuse UFO researchers. And Lou Elizondo is not a UFO researcher, but I'm saying that was what he was tasked to do. And it's not a conspiracy because Richard Doty is now somehow accepted by the UFO community, and he gives talks about it. And the story goes is that he actually led a researcher to sort of lose his mind because he was giving him false information that was making him think all kind of crazy stuff, right? And then the guy, I think he killed himself. And
Paul Benowitz,
yeah.
And brilliant scientist. He was studying U.S. Air Force Base, and he started seeing weird experiments and tests that they were doing, and thought they were UFOs. And when he reported it to them, they sent out Doty, who fed him with a bunch of disinfo.
Yeah, they even sent out like Men in Black to visit him, which were obviously not real Men in Black. Like, I remember reading about it a long time ago. I don't have the full, I don't have it fresh in my mind, but I'm just saying they could definitely delete emails. That's something that it fascinates me when people don't think that the government can just erase you from the face of the earth if they wanted to. Anyone, the mafia could erase you if they wanted to. Like, it just takes a little bit of work. They got to pull your teeth out, throw it in a skeleton, light that on fire, get rid of your background, and that's it. You know what I mean? It's really not that. It's not a conspiracy. People have this issue too, in my opinion solely, that they don't imagine these things could happen, or they don't think these things could happen. If you go to another country, like a third world country, you can even come to Argentina. They used to throw people out of airplanes, make them disappear. There's a whole thing about how they used to make the young kids that were going against the government or what was happening in a certain period of time, they would break into your house, take you, and you'd never be seen again. So can they delete some emails? Definitely. 100%.
I mean, that's a good argument as to why. Well, two points. Why would they want to study us? Because we're so bizarre, man. Humans can be so creative and full of love and caring, and on the other hand, they can be absolutely evil and hurtful and destructive. I mean, it's an interesting species we are. Richard, I'm going to go back to the report for a sec. Luis asks, what would be the perfect report, or what would the perfect report say, in your opinion? We'll start with you, Richard, and we'll get everybody's opinion.
Perfect report. I would say probably some sort of identification about the whole thing about national security. Because if you want to hide something, national security is the way to hide it. So if we could get rid of that national security caveat and have a look and see what it says. I mean, coming from the UK side of it, the United Kingdom UFO X-Files finished in 2009 when they turned around and said there was no evidence of a potential threat. So you don't stop something if something better is taking over. I mean, everybody talks about the SR-71 Blackbird and the U-2 before it. Why would you get rid of it when it's perfectly good for the job and then suddenly turn around and get rid of it for no reason? There's something else is going to be there to take over from it. That's going to be bigger, better, and probably more secret. So, yeah, I think the whole national security caveat is the problem with these reports. Is because you can hide behind it. And nobody's ever going to question it. It's national security.
Is absolutely. And if that was taken away, if we took away the concern for national security and the government did come out with a full report, what would that look like to you, Jamie?
Well, I think, let me say before I get into it, I think that the government relies on fear of what its citizens are going to do with information. So even if this report had definitive information, pictures, videos, samples, whatever, to show that this was an extraterrestrial source, I don't mean necessarily a body, but that it's something that could not be made here, that we would see something to say, okay, here is this material, and we have 79% of it is stuff that you can find here on Earth or can be made, and the rest of it can't be. We don't think there's a threat, but in all honesty, this is something that we can't explain. And get other people involved in it as far as other researchers, go to non-government
How about
agencies.
other countries? How about governments from other countries? Yeah.
I think it would have to be, but that's the thing is the government never wants to say, we don't know, because that in their mind shows weakness.
Yeah.
But if you show, here is everything we do know, and we invite others to come in and tell us what they think, I think that's what a report would say. I mean, that's really all it could say, unless you had something that, was stamped, made in SETI or, Antares or, made, wherever, that you can't explain it, but you can say, we don't know, and invite others to come in, because that's true clarity. That says that we're wide open. It's not a weather balloon. It's not, garbage bags, but we don't think it's a threat at this point. That's what I think a good report would look like.
I think the other thing as well is you've got to get rid of this folklore attitude towards it as well. If you look at Groom Lake in Nevada, it's folklore, isn't it? There's something going on out there. They hide it really, really well. So everybody's going to turn around and say, well, what is going on out there? And then it becomes folklore that there is something out there. And it might turn out there is nothing there. And it's just a way of diverting everybody's attention from something that is going on.
Yeah, like down the street, there is really something going on, but everybody's talking about this lake. So let's hide that and shroud it in secrecy, and they'll keep looking there. Oh, I agree, sir.
So, John, I think you can take it up another notch with this and answer that question. What would the perfect report look like to you? I mean, take away all the restrictions that the government's putting on themselves.
No, I know.
And they're going to tell us what they want to know, or what we want to know. What do we want to know?
I honestly think that Richard and Jamie made great points, but I honestly think that even with everything I said about the report that came out, I read it like 5 times, and I tried to go like, okay, let me try and understand what value this really has, right? And unfortunately, my response could be much deeper, but I think that people at this point in time are at the tip of this conversation, right? They're at the very, people are like, oh yeah, UFOs. Wow, UFOs. They don't do what we do, Andrew. They don't sit down and read cases over the whole weekend thinking about what's going on, or read books and try to understand what's really happening with this phenomenon. Like for me, the phenomenon does actually. Now, when I say they don't care if we see them or not, I'm not saying they don't care about us. And for some reason, they have been interacting with us for so many years. So there is some kind of importance there. So this report, in my opinion, what we saw, what a lot of people hated to see, I feel like a lot of people just really wanted this to be the end of their constant journeys down the rabbit hole. People wanted this to be, get this over with, tell me the truth, I'm done. I've done this for too long. I've asked too many questions. And that's not how it's going to play out, because people imagine that today, there's still people arguing about race, sex, culture, religion, different ideas. And in order for us to really understand an alien phenomenon, we need to be able to understand ourselves first. And the government also knows that it needs the power. It needs to control us. If something comes down that is much more powerful than the government, and it may even, like, imagine if it just started interacting with us and started telling us, no, you guys are all incorrect. What you need to do is not go to war. What you need to do openly, right? So imagine it like a Marvel movie or something. There's like a craft in the middle of Times Square, and outside comes a being, and it starts talking to people and using supposedly, the way that these beings interact with people is they make them feel a certain way. They make them, they talk telepathically and all these kinds of things. They just start talking to people. I think if it was that kind of disclosure, that kind of contact that we would make, the world would completely change. If they decided to do that, they're not doing that. The government is taking its time, and it's formulating something to try to take us to a clear understanding of it. But again, we come back to the same thing, where the government will never, ever tell you 100% the truth. And that's because it's for your own good. That's what they say. That might not be what we think.
Yeah, but we're grown up, man.
Good.
We're adults, so
I know we're adults.
We need to hear the truth. So
Not all grown up, though.
That's great. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
in some ways, we're never going to grow up. But in this respect, I mean, in this topic, I think. Well, let's move on. I mean, Luis asked a great question here. Or you made a good point. UFO research lab opens in Fukushima, aims to solve mystery of local sightings. I have not read that headline anywhere. Japan is making some moves, but that brings up a good point. 2 points, actually. One is the nuclear connection with UFOs. And Richard, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about this. Why is the nuclear arsenal or nuclear power, why do you think it's so interesting to the UFOs? And why is it such a threat that they are checking this stuff out?
Well, first of all, I agree what the others said about just being a sideshow and coming and just like a school visit to this planet. You can see that, and I agree with that completely. Why wouldn't you? How would you put the threat to nuclear weapons? Again, it's control, isn't it? This is the ultimate weapon we have. The government controls it, and if they lose control of it, then what have they got? And we all know about MAD during the 60s and 70s and 80s. If you destroy us, we'll destroy you. Fine. But if you turn off our stuff, which has appeared in the newspapers and the press about things happening, what are you going to do? And of course, the other problem is if you have things with like a hair trigger and suddenly a nuclear bomb goes off in the middle of Missouri or Kentucky or Kansas or wherever they've got the sites now, what's the reaction going to be to the country to suddenly have a nuke go off in the middle of somewhere? And if it's close to a city and you're going to get the obvious problems with that, it's going to cause a nightmare, and they're going to want somebody to point the finger at and blame. And it's much easier to blame somebody and take a written action against it than it is to sit down and try and figure out what's going on.
So, and we did talk about the on our last episode together, Richard. You and I talked about the possibility that these things are accidentally start or trigger a launch warning, and then in retaliation, in a hotspot like Pakistan and India, or India, China, they retaliate by launching their nukes, thinking that they're under attack, and it was caused by UFOs messing around with their nukes.
It happened in
Go ahead,
Russia.
John. Yes, it did. It
That
happened
happened in
in
Russia,
the
yeah.
U.S. also, but go ahead, John. Would you like to expound on that?
No, I was just gonna say that actually happened in Russia, and
Yeah.
for the U.S., like I'm saying, obviously playing with nukes is not a good thing, but
Agreed.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, we almost had a launch. I think it was at a base in Arkansas, back in the early '80s, where some technicians were working, and one of them literally dropped his wrench, and it
Oh,
went
yeah.
down
That
into
was
the smoke.
that was the Titan base.
Yeah, there you go. So I mean, we've been really close. But if I might, I'd like to throw something out to you, because I'm uninitiated here. The first thought when you hear about the UFOs and nuclear energy, which literally until I was invited on the show, I'd never heard that connection before. But my first thought was, oh, they're coming to find, all of our weapons and all that, and we're thinking, oh, well, they're not really worried about us. But what if we flip that around and say that their energy, their technology is based on something completely different than what we base ours on? And that the nuclear energy captivates them, and maybe they've come down and are taking some, like collecting samples, and want to see what we humans are doing with it, and why we're dropping it on places and wiping out some of our own races, and then bullying each other with it. And that, I mean, if you flip the whole thing, maybe that's something to do with it.
Yeah, that is a highly insightful hypothesis. And um, John, what do you think about that? Do you think that these guys, maybe they've harnessed uh, what is it, dark energy, right? And that's what they're using to power their craft somehow. And they see nuclear energy as something that they haven't even maybe discovered. So they're
Yeah.
scoping out the nukes. Uh, and then if they're tampering with it, taking samples, and they accidentally activate a launch sequence, I mean, what do you think about that? Any
you guys want
thoughts
to
on that?
hear? You guys want to hear something funny? There's cases of UFOs landing and them taking dirt samples.
Right.
So for them to be taking nuclear samples or trying to understand what it is, right, or figuring out what it is, it kind of makes sense. I mean, that's what they do. They, like you guys said this earlier, like they're like scientists studying us, and I could get real crazy, real wild, and start talking about the abduction phenomenon, the hybrid program, and how supposedly people think they have hybrid children with them. And the craziest part to me now with the conversation that's happening is that everyone's like, no, don't say that. Don't talk about that. No, you're going to scare everybody away. And I'm like, guys, inside of these things, there's probably these things that everyone has been seeing and talking about for all these years. If they're real, we should start worrying about those things, because that's the crazy part. The rest is just like a flying saucer. Okay, cool, whatever. But the crazy part is how it interacts with us. So I think, one thing too to say about, I said this a long time ago. If they're really so advanced and their technology is so advanced, why would they even need to fly over, a nuclear base? Couldn't they just like hack into the system, or like in today's day and age, couldn't they just like download all the information they needed from something? They could like probably get into my phone, learn what I eat, what time I go to sleep, what I think in the day when I tweet. You know what I mean? They could probably go even deeper and find, like, I don't know, some medical reports or something in my email account or anything. I'm saying I've been really questioning this idea that like they need to like hover over things and fly over things to really get information. So, and on top of that, if you want to get even crazier, you can think about the stories and the encounters that people have where they say they walk through the wall They just came through the wall. They talked to me. They made me feel a certain way. And then I was just calm. And then they told me everything was okay. They took me on the spaceship, and I don't know why I went on it. I just went on it because I felt like everything was good and I was in a good place and I was trusting them. So they could just like walk through the walls of the nuclear base and come into the room where they have everything set up and just talk to the guy, the technician, and say, "You want to launch this? Trust me, you should launch it. We believe in love and peace. And the only way to get this done is if you launch this." So I always get all these questions that come up in my mind when I hear, like they're coming over ship, they're coming over things. And I'm like, even me, like if I had a bunch of money and I said, let's just say I was an evil man or something, I would be like, I'd have a team of hackers that would just be hacking into everything. I'd be like, I wouldn't be like flying my helicopter or a drone into different places. I'd be like getting in there any way I could without being seen. And these things, we have to assume that they would have some sort of capability to do that without being seen,
Okay,
Unless-
John, on that point, I wanted to kind of explore the idea of these UFOs being a threat, perceived as a threat to, number one, our military assets, but to the greater humanity as a whole. Richard, what do you think? Are these UFOs, are they actually posing a threat to us, or is that a false narrative being perpetrated by the government?
I think it's probably a false narrative. I mean, I said it last time I was on. It's akin to us going to Africa and stamping on an anthill. How would we feel about that? To use a line from a film, how would we feel about stamping on an anthill that's thousands of miles away? And the same thing here. And listening to John there, I just had a sudden sort of thought and popped into my head about this whole how we're being watched by scientists, and it kind of makes you think that the Earth basically could be a massive lab experiment.
I've heard the term zoo used in that respect.
Zoo hypothesis. Yeah.
But you sit there and listen, and then going along that theory further about, yes, they're going to be an advanced race. Yes, they're going to be able to travel faster than light, possibly, to get where we're going. Yes, they could fold space to get to where they want to go and all the rest of that stuff. But then you start thinking, well, hang on a second. If they're coming to visit us and having a look at stuff here, how about throwing the idea out there that basically they could be our future? And they've come back to try and find out what went wrong before they got to the point they're at. Just
Jamie,
to put that one out there.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Jamie, you had a point that you wanted to make earlier?
I was going to say what John was saying is we also can compound that to think that maybe they're way out there, like satellites, tapping in to all the satellites, getting all the information, and then having to decide, okay, well, we want to go to this point to this guy.
Yeah.
Because we know that we can manipulate him the best. And that's why when we see them hovering and going, that there's been all of this prep work or something behind, but before it happened.
So that's a good point. If they had the ability to do that and they haven't done that, does that mean that they're not a threat? Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Well, no, but I think it means we shouldn't say that they're not a threat in the same way that when your neighbor walks, a new neighbor moves in and he's bringing in a bunch of shotguns and, all of these. Well, the guy could just be a huge avid collector, but I'm going to keep my eye on him. So, the same thing is we know the neighbors are coming in and we know they're searching and rooting around. So let's definitely keep an eye on it, but there's no reason to get out our own shotguns and start showing them around. I mean, they can see anything that's going on here. I did have one thing I wanted to ask you guys, and it just kind of went in my head. What do you really think would happen if the government did come on live to the world and say, listen, here's a baby alien that was crashed in Roswell, and we've been holding on to it, and here are the components, and we just want everybody to know the truth. I almost think that would be...
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let me throw a little bit of a twist into that. And I'll start with you on that one, John. So, you know, address Jamie's question, but also consider the idea of a foreign government coming out with their information and their evidence before the United States does. And then how would that twist up the game?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I've actually been thinking to myself for the last few months, why wouldn't there be like a war behind the scenes to try to get, if there are crash craft, like they're talking about in some of these New York Times articles, if there are these things, you got to believe that there would be like secret groups or ops teams that would be like, hey, we need to get this before the Colombians get it. It crashed in Colombia. We found out about it yesterday, and you guys need to get this, because if they get it, they could turn it into a weapon, or they could use it against us, or they could learn how to use it. And that's when this whole thing gets real tricky and real mushy and real like, okay, what's really going on here and what's really happening behind the scenes. People are thinking about the government. They're worried about the government telling them the truth. And I keep saying, don't forget about Project Blue Book. Don't forget about all these other, Project Paperclip, all these different things that happened in the past. The people for years were like, oh, that's a conspiracy. Even Area 51, man, when I was a kid, they were like, it's a conspiracy. It's not real. How could you believe in that? Oh, that's crazy. That would never happen. And now Area 51 is like, they marched on it. Like they went and had parties in front of it.
And the Rudo guy ran in front of it. So it's kind of real.
Totally. I'm saying, I don't think that there maybe crashed. I think that's kind of going back on what Rich was saying, or what you guys were saying about locations and this fantasy around it, that's where it is, and that's where that's where the craft are, and that's where the alien bodies are. I think Area 51 might be one of those spots, and that doesn't mean that they don't have that kind of stuff. But I think, Andrew, what we all need to think about is definitely do not take other countries out of the game here. And I think they're not going to be as open as the United States. The United States is open because the United States is like the cool kid in the class, right? The United States, like, yeah, I got a new car. I got a BMW. Check it out. And the kid who actually got a BMW, maybe a way that he shouldn't have got the BMW, is in the back of the class not talking about the BMW. He's just listening to the cool kid talk about the BMW. Or I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm just trying to say, like, trust me that all the other countries, if they have 2 grams of sense, are doing what the U.S. is doing. And I think it might be even harder to do this kind of stuff in the U.S., and in formed up countries, because there's too much bureaucracy. There's too much, like, there's too much paperwork you have to do. There's too many people you have to talk to. There's too much.
Well, there's also too much at stake for the U.S. government to give up if they were to divulge. We talked about this last night with my guests, and the idea that if the U.S. government would come forward with their toys, they show all of their cards, right?
It will never happen.
The only way that would happen is if it was a unilateral agreement and everybody did it at the same time. And I equated that to the drawdown of nuclear weapons. It would take it would be just as hard for countries to eliminate their nuclear weapons arsenal all at the same time as it would to bring out their UFO goodies. So, but taking that out of the equation, in a better world, if they actually did do that, they revealed what they know, they tell us, and they show us the goods, and they show the evidence, and now it's known by everybody as well as it's known by those in the UFO community. Does that change the world that we live in, or do people just go along about their daily lives, life as usual? What do you think, Richard?
I think it would scare a lot of people. I think you'd have the mass panic, and you'd have the whole society trying to turn on itself. And although I hate to say it, it's going to go down the religious side of it straight away, because there's always going to be a religion side to it, and it's going to be is this God speaking to us? Is this somebody else speaking to us? And religion will just take over, I think, and it will probably tear the world apart fairly quickly. It's if somebody turned around and went, there we go, here's all our stuff, and they did exist, and they were amongst us, and they have been visiting us, then it's going to tear the world apart. You'll have country boundaries won't exist because you'll have the religious fanatics taking over, and I think it'd just be a mess. It would be dog eat dog, I think, for a while. Then we'd have to hope that they could come down and be benevolent and show us how to react to it. Because if they could do it to us, they must have done it somewhere else. They must have had the experience, unless we're the lab experiment.
Jamie, I want to give you a chance to respond to that also. What do you think?
Well, I want to say one of the first things that I would not be fearful of, but I think what happened is, I think if you are presented with fast, hard evidence after what has been, 70 years of being lied to, I think a lot of people would be like, yeah, right, and just move on down the line. And then the people who really have been wanting to believe and look at it and see it, they're going to be, yes, I'm justified. I knew it all along. And then I worry that the rest of the people would go exactly like you were saying. Then those people wouldn't worry about the evidence in front of them of God's existence, or if God is speaking to us or whatever, and instead see it as, this is Revelations, this is the end of the world. I've had conversations with people. I feel like I'm a spiritual person, and I believe, in a creator. But I think that the interpretation that man does of what those words mean are still left up to the human. So why can't you say, if he's created the earth and the heavens, that doesn't mean he's created all of these other things? And just because you finally have evidence in front of you that now we know that there is something else, doesn't mean anything but further cementing your belief. But that being said, it doesn't matter. People are going to do just like Richard said. People are going to use it to be divisive, to start cataclysmic wars. I would agree, if they would finally believe it. But then there'd be that other group who just like, just like here in the country right now with COVID, are going to be those people that no matter what the evidence in front of them is, I don't believe that.
I mean, you just got my channel banned, Jamie. You said the word. No, John. What are your thoughts, man? Do you have any more uplifting thoughts, or a little bit more hope for humanity if the truth is revealed?
Ooh, I think Jamie and Richard make both. If you connect those 2 points, the two conversations, the two things they said there, I think if you mix those both, it's kind of what would play out, right? And I think, Jamie, I'm not going to say the word, but with the current situation the world is in, I think it's a good example of something you can draw from to see how people really pay attention to reality and what they do to, some people have a lot of faith in humanity. I, unfortunately, after the whole situation we've been through for the last 2 years or so, I've lost a bit of faith in humanity. I used to have some faith. I started losing it. And then people try to pull it back. They go, well, look at what's going on. Look how we're fighting and look how we're growing. And I go, yeah, but look at all the people that unfortunately are not here anymore. People that lost loved ones and family members, all because of ignorance or because of paying attention to not credible sources, or just the real issue was that we were all confused, from credible to non-credible to the whole world was confused when this happened. And I think that's kind of how this will play out. And who knows if this will be a good example to understand how that kind of situation will play out. I don't ever think, though, it's going to play out where the way we imagine it, like in Hollywood, where what I said earlier, where they land in the middle of Times Square and they're talking to people. I think it will slowly become something that is considered a reality. People will start talking about it more, and then it will become a 100% reality. And that at that point, we'll see how the governments, I'm more worried about the governments of the world and their reaction. Because I was saying the other day, let's be pretty obvious. There's no way they're not going to want to shoot these things out of the sky. And they've already tried, supposedly. If you look into cases and stuff from the past, tried to shoot them out of the sky. They try to chase them down. They fire on them. I don't know how they don't create like a task force, like like the UAPTF, but they create something designated to taking these things out if they can. Lots of people will argue and say, well, that's completely impossible. The tech's too fast. This is too fast. But I think as we grow and we learn how it works, we might be able to figure something out. And then there is when stuff is going to get real crazy. And it might eventually, for our grandchildren, turn into a Hollywood movie where my son is flying a super, I don't know, half UFO, half jet to chase down some UFO that's entering some airspace it's not supposed to be in and shooting at it. I don't know. It's crazy to think about. I think right now we are where we need to be, honestly.
Okay.
I think people are where they need to be at right now. They're not where they want to be, but this is where we all have to be. It's unfortunate, but
Well, yeah, because you don't grow without adversity. You don't advance without adversity. And so adversity is a good thing. It's a painful thing, and there's a period of grief that you have to go through when you experience adversity. But then you have to get serious about moving forward, and you make steps to improve life, not only for yourself but for everybody around you. This is why I have hope, and why I have said it before on this channel that I think we are right on the verge, if not already beginning stages of a new Renaissance era, where technology is going to advance beyond our imaginations. Art, science, every area of technology, and our society is right on the verge of this new Renaissance, where things are going to be, it's not going to be a perfect world. It's never going to be a utopia. In fact, a utopia is impossible to exist. It would quickly turn into that's another story completely. But I think we're on the verge of a really bright future in the very near future, not too far from now, a couple years, maybe a decade at the most. And I'm very hopeful for it. And that is with or without the idea that aliens are among us, whether it's openly or in the shadows still. But I believe that humanity will overcome any adversity that's thrown its way. I just think we're that much of an adaptable species that we can overcome anything, especially when we work together. But when we're divided, that's when things start to break down. And so with that, I wanted to get to a question real quick, because rather be squidding. Sorry, dude, your name's hard to say. Rather be squidding says, if the UFOs are a threat, does it even matter? I think they are so advanced that we should treat them as non-threatening because we don't have a choice. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So, Richard, you haven't talked in a little bit. What do you think about that question? And let me put it back up there so you can read it again.
Yeah, I'll go back to the argument I said earlier on. If they've come all that distance to be here, or they'd be here already and they've been hiding, how would we feel about it if we did it? And I don't think we should. I don't think we should treat them as non-threatening, because I think the human species will always want to have a threat amongst it to make it feel better, to just justify its actions. So yeah, should we treat them as non-threatening? Probably. In reality, we probably wouldn't, because again, the governments would take their own spin on things, and unless the whole world unified itself and came up with a plan that was unifying across the whole of the world about how we're going to deal with it, then nothing's going to happen, because we'll sit there and fight and fight and fight. So, yeah, if they're that advanced, they're not going to be non-threatening. If they're that advanced, they're advanced, I hate to use the word spiritually, morally. They might be like us, they might not be like us. And if they are moral creatures, then why would they want to be threatening towards us on well, effectively it's that child species, isn't it? We are children at the moment. We're just still growing up. Then at some point when we grow up, then maybe we'll become threatening to them. But we're talking hundreds of thousands of years, unless we kill ourselves all before then anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, we don't have a choice, yes, but I don't know about treating them non-threatening. I think the population as a whole would probably look at it as a non-threatening thing until the governments tell them that they're a non-threatening thing.
Yeah,
And if they're not, then it might jump up and bite us.
isn't that kind of the state that things are in, Jamie, right now, where people don't even care that we're being visited by something? They look at this report. I was so optimistic about it, and because my dad sent me a text message, the report's out. And then I talked to him today, and I was like, did you read the report? No. Do you want me to send you the report? No. It's back to business as usual. And, I know he's one person, right? And I got that nosebleed last night when I mentioned it to my guests. They both shot me down and said, he's only one person. You can't be optimistic about that. But, I mean, we already see these things as non-threatening or even a non-issue. I mean, most people. But is that the proper way to look at this, or should we consider them a threat, or should we try to make inroads with these things and build a relationship in some way?
Well, I'm pretty much a person who is going to judge you on your actions, and I'm always going to want to start out a new relationship with an open hand. And that's it's true. We can sit here and talk about how we as a collective, capital W, need to respond. Excuse me. But what's going to come down to is how do they, being our government officials, react to it. And no matter what we say they should do, they're going to do what they want to do. John, I've been holding on to this because I wanted to tell you, um, I think it's okay to lose faith in government and lose faith in the certain organizations. Um, I as naive as this may sound, I don't ever feel that I'm going to lose faith in people because I go to the grocery store, I go to the parks and whatever, and people are generally good. I really feel that a person can be bad and be in a position to do a lot of bad things. But I always feel that I gotta feel that we as a collective, small case W, are good people. But when it comes down to it, what they're going to do, they're going to set the pace, just like every movie we've ever seen. The first time we see one, somebody somewhere is going to get scared or going to get brave and fire the first shot. And it's going to come down to the little people like us when we're given the opportunity to meet these beings, whatever they are, to show that we're good. And like Richard said, just hope they're of the same, they have the same ability to have morals like we do. But again, if they hundreds of thousands of years, or they may see morals as a non-issue anymore, that the things that they do don't matter, then we could be in trouble.
Man, when you said hundreds of thousands of years, it made me think of the future human hypothesis that these
Mhm.
things could be future humans. Uh, so, John, do you want to respond to what Jamie just said? Because I thought that was he's
Yeah.
kind of directing it at
No,
your
I thought
previous
that was
comments.
I thought that was really nice. It was good advice, definitely. And maybe, I need to
Love you,
lighten up a
man.
little bit. Don't worry. I thought it was nice. But yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty chill guy, right? So I'm always kind of like looking for the bright side in things. So I need to maybe focus on a little more now after everything we've been through. But I'm just saying thank you for that. That was nice. But on the point of, are they a threat, and should we even counter that threat? The problem with me, and the problem with, like, I understand why people say, oh, don't talk about this, don't talk about that currently, because I spent a lot of time looking into the work of John Mack or Bud Hopkins about, alien abduction and encounters that people have with these supposed occupants of these craft. Of course, not all of them are true, and we can't fall to delusion or fantasy when listening to these kinds of stories. But if UFOs are real, we got to start taking into consideration that some of these encounters are real. And what it seems like what they do, like we said before, is study us, right? And they treat us a bit like animals. Well, how we treat animals, which is really messed up. So a lot of the time, we treat animals horribly most of the time, and we don't even think about it. So maybe they do the same thing. But if I were to come face to face with a occupant, I'm going to tell you the honest truth. I wouldn't trust it. I would have to like build a relationship with it, because I know that if the way the universe works and the way life works and everything works, there's the dark side and the light side. There's the dark and the light. So there may be some of these beings that want to interact with us, and they're animal activists, for example. So you can think about it that way. They don't like interacting with people that way and humans that way. They want to learn something different from them. And then there may be a group of extraterrestrials or ultra-terrestrials or whatever they are that want to interact with us like we interact with animals. So I always make the joke that I think I haven't been abducted at this point, because if they abducted me, the first thing I would say, first I'd ask them, all right, what took you so long? The second thing I'd ask them is, if I saw other people on a ship, imagine if you go on a ship, you're abducted, right? I'm just relying on stories and things that we've read in cases. You're on a ship, you see other people, they all look scared. They're all in the same room as you. You all look like scared little animals in a cage or something. I would hijack that ship if I had the possibility. I would fight against everything that I could, because it's just not right. If they give me the option to get on the ship and they say, hey, you want to come on here? Do you want to participate in this program where we test you? Maybe I'd be like, yeah, cool. Thanks. Do I get like a gift card or something after? Cool.
Sure.
Yeah. But if not, it's just like, we have to understand too that I do think their technology is way more advanced than ours, right? Their craft and all, that just seems to be what's been happening for all these years. But once I threw out the theory that all the years that we've been alive on this planet, we've advanced technologically so much in a short span of time. Over the last 70 years, we've changed so much when it comes to technology. And over the last 70 years, their craft and the way they interact with us has not changed too much, according to stories, right? So how advanced are they really? Maybe they're like stuck at a certain point where that's just as advanced as they're going to get. And maybe they just continue to do the same thing. So I wouldn't trust them. And I think we should figure out a way to at least keep ourselves free from any sort of interaction that we don't want to have. That's it. But other than that, what can we do?
Harvinder Sunila has a thought or a question. They've been keeping it a secret for 70 plus years, and I believe they're talking about the U.S. government. They could keep the secret going for decades to come. Agreed. Why do you, and I'll start with you, Richard, why do you think that the government is talking about it now?
I honestly feel that because the people that are actually reporting these things now are people that are credible people. Like you've got the Air Force pilots, you've got people from air traffic control reporting these things. You've got everybody they know what they're talking about when it comes to aerial phenomena. And I think we've come to a watershed point where it's now not a stigma to report these things. And once we've got to that point where people aren't afraid to report them, then people start taking notice. And the more, I hate to use the word expert, but if you have an expert who's in their field and they report things like that, then more people are likely to believe them. And I think it's going to a point of the governments are going to have to start believing what people are saying. And maybe that's, again, they're only going to give us what we want to see and what they want us to see. So it's going to be heavily redacted whatever happens. But, they might have to start talking now, and this might be the start of it. You never know. It could go on. You've got the Russians with Institute 22, haven't you, with their Project Blueprint type thing, we had our air staff in the MOD main building that stopped in 2009. At some point, the information's got to come out. And yeah, I mean, we tend to have 100 years rule for anything involving humans, because basically after 100 years, they're going to be dead. So yeah, give it 100 years. We know the people that are involved in it are probably dead by now anyway. What's the harm in releasing it? And I think we're getting to that point slowly now. There aren't many people left from the Second World War now. And if we're talking about Roswell in 47 and was it Betty and Barney Hill in the 50s, the big ones that were the abductees, we're 60, 70 years down the line already with that. So why can't they start giving us the information? We won't get it all. They won't. It's like you said, they're not going to hold up a baby alien and say, "Hi, here it is. Look, we've got it for you." That's not going to happen. And major defense countries with huge amounts of money they've got for them are going to use the technology and reverse it. So yeah, perhaps this is just the tipping point. People are starting to believe with credible witnesses what's going on. When you've got a fighter pilot from the American Navy or the British Navy even saying they've seen things and they've tracked things from the ships, especially that one I liked was the ship tracked it and it hit the sea. Going back to what we were talking about under the ocean, these things are out there now. Everybody knows about them. So perhaps, I don't know, perhaps someone's had the idea that perhaps we should start drip feeding this information out. Perhaps it's the start of hardening us up for something that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Perhaps they already know something's going to happen and they're going to start giving us the information for us to start processing it. We don't know, do we?
I've heard that theory a few times. That's a little bit out there, that theory, that that the aliens are kind of pushing the agenda to get this information out so that they can come and make contact and not freak everybody out. I'm trying to wrap my head around that one because I've heard that from some people that I think are pretty credible. That's certainly a possibility. Jamie, so and I'm going to throw this other comment here from it was Harvinder. Didn't they say the same thing about the JFK files, and then they slapped another 50 years of secrecy? So they were about to come out with the JFK files, and this was just recently, but they didn't. They balked on that, and they added another 50 years of top secret on those files. So those won't see the light of day in our lifetime.
Well, I agree with Richard. I do have to say, though, really, when we talk about, well, why did they do it now? I mean, what did they do? They gave us, like John said, 6 pages of, we don't know. We know it's not this, it's not this, it's not. So they didn't really give us anything. It allowed the conversation to continue without them making any definitive, explanations of what's going on. And like the government likes to do, hey, look at this shiny thing. Go follow that and talk about that for a while. Because with the C word, the kerfunkle that's going on right now, I mean, anything is better than talking about that. But I really think it comes down to the fact that they didn't really give us anything. They gave us a lot of it's not this, which isn't anything. So I think probably now that 100-year rule is probably coming in, I'd love to think that it's because they're going to give us more information in the future and are starting to spoon feed us a little bit here and there. But I still think, like I said earlier, that if they came up with a baby, with airplane wing parts of a ship, most people would brush, whatever. Well, did you see this show on TV? It's pretty cool. Let's see what else is on.
Yeah. John, what are your thoughts on that? The idea that they're starting to talk about it now, but they give us a little bit and then they pull it back on us. They pull the rug out from under us almost every time.
It's definitely something I thought about, with Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon coming into the scene and government people sort of stepping out to talk about this topic. At first I was kind of like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to trust you. You know, like you can't be telling me about UFOs. That doesn't make any sense. And over time, I grew to see what they were doing, the approach they were taking, and how they were presenting themselves and what they were talking about. So I do believe that they are doing, a service to this topic. But I think that the 100-year rule, like Richard brought up, and I think that is kind of coming into play, because imagine younger minds getting into it, younger people getting into the government. They might just be like, hey, something was really going on with this UFO stuff. We should start talking about it. We should start taking it serious. And if they start looking at stuff like what I was talking about earlier, abductions, and they really start digging into it, they might be like, okay, wait, this is an issue that we need to like really focus on. Or it could be that our technology gets better, and as our cameras get better, and as our children get smarter, and as society and humanity just grows, we're getting to a point where they can no longer ignore this topic, and they need to figure out a way to disseminate it into the public in a way that's not going to completely blow them out of the water, right? I think people will, like Richard brought up, or Jamie brought up religion, and he was saying that he still believed God created everything. And I thought that was a nice approach. I thought that was smart, and that was a good take, and a good way to look at it. But I know there's so many people out there that won't look at it that way, right? And then there's so many people that, like, again, we can talk about the situation that happened. There was this really funny video of a woman. It wasn't funny, actually. It's messed up that I said it was funny. But it was a video of a woman in Argentina, and she was maybe in her 70s or 80s, right? And she, I guess, smoked cigarettes every day. And at one point here, we ran out of cigarettes, right? In the very beginning of the situation. So nobody could get cigarettes. And the woman was like holding on to a guardrail at a bus station. Normal. Imagine like your grandmother. Like somebody like that looks completely normal, not like a crazy person, screaming and shaking the guardrail, screaming, I want cigarettes. Somebody give me a cigarette. And I'm saying, imagine a situation where you run out of cigarettes. And now imagine a situation where your whole reality gets flipped upside down. What the effects will be for some people. Humanity can persevere. Humanity can understand. But don't forget all the people behind you when you persevere, or when you come out forward, that stay behind or that fall along your journey to persevere. It's like, that's why I'm saying I think when I said that I lost faith in humanity, I haven't lost full faith. I still believe there are good people, smart people, and all of you guys, I believe you're smart people. I don't think that there are bad people out there, and there are confused people or ignorant people or people that don't pay attention to things. And there's a lot of good people, and we need to continue fighting. But don't forget that those people are an issue. They will be an issue with these kinds of topics. They end up becoming a big issue when they come together and they form, I don't know, like it's crazy to think about, because the world will definitely change, like it or not.
No doubt.
The reality changes. Humanity's history might change. It might change our past, which would be even crazier. And it will definitely change the future. So I don't know, man. It's a question that I think about constantly. But
It's a good thought, John. But so, Richard, you told me before we started this that you had about 90 minutes. Are you able to go a little bit longer, or do you?
Yeah, I can go a bit further. Yeah.
Okay, good, because this is good conversation. Now, Scott Brown's in the chat room. I just want to give a shout out to Scott. He's been on the program a few times. He's a great researcher, and if anybody does not know about his work, please go check it out. He's got a Facebook group called In the Field, and him and his friends over there in the field do some great work. I'll just leave it at that. But he asks an interesting question. In terms of a threat to humans, are any of the guests familiar with the very well documented Colores Brazil case? That's not the question that I saw earlier, Scott. I don't know about that case, but there was another question you asked. There it is. any of the guests familiar with the Silurian hypothesis? That's the question I wanted you guys to talk about. So go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, that's where can a modern society pick up the traces of possibly a society before it became along?
Yeah. Yes.
So can we pick if the Earth had a society beforehand that was technologically advanced? Would we be able to pick up the signatures or the idea that we could find that technology or have an understanding of it from now? I think that's where they got the Doctor Who characters from. I think, wasn't it, the Silurians?
Oh, maybe. I don't watch Doctor Who, but so in relation to the UAP or the UFO issue, the Silurian hypothesis is this advanced culture that was here, like the Atlantean civilization. They disappeared from existence, but could they possibly have continued, outside the eyes of modern humans and advanced beyond what we're capable of to this day? And
I think that goes back down towards maybe that whole thing of the sea and the ocean side of things, because if there was a civilization that was technologically advanced enough before we evolved and came up, then where would be the ideal place to hide? And Atlantis, bottom of the sea. There's so many folklore and myths and legends with civilizations from under the sea. Then there's no smoke without fire. Could it be one of them?
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, are you familiar with that
No.
hypothesis? Okay.
No,
so
it made me think about what is it called, the Mud Kingdom, where there's a theory where people believe that we had gotten to great technological levels and then were wiped out and started over again. But no, I've never heard the Silurian, and I'm also not a big Doctor Who fan. Gotta love Tom Baker though.
cool. What about you, John? Have you heard of this theory? And what are your thoughts?
I've heard about it slightly because I've looked into Atlantis and that kind of stuff, and I think what Richard said kind of put my thoughts into a clear, coherent response there. But I'm saying, yeah, why not? Humans have this misconception, this misguided misconception, in my opinion, that we are the most fascinating things on the entire planet. When I look at a tiger in the wild, when I look at any animal in the wild and see how they interact with anything, it's fascinating. It's beautiful. They don't have any kinks. They don't have any flaws. Even when they act crazy and they roll around or they scream at each other and fight, it's just natural and it's beautiful. And humans have this I got to get dressed every morning. I can't just walk out into the wild. I got to take a shower. I got to brush my teeth. I got to, and I can't even get my own food. I got to go to the supermarket after going to my job to pay for it and buy it. Then there's so many things about our species that I think we find it like, oh yeah, we're so advanced that we destroy the planet and we pollute everything with our amazing technology. And to believe that there was maybe somewhere out there a species of beings that for some reason have been living under the sea that we haven't explored, right? That we haven't seen really. I don't think it's that far-fetched. I think what we need to start doing is realize that UFOs are real, and we need to start thinking a little bit more outside of the realm of what could be possible, that what we've been taught could be possible. Because when I was a kid, they used to tell me there was no water in space. And now look where we are, right?
There was also 9 planets.
Yeah, there was also 9 planets. I'm saying
no.
Pluto is still a planet.
Don't say
Pluto.
Hashtag
Don't say
Pluto. Yeah.
Pluto was a planet when I was at school.
Yep, same here.
I'm saying,
but going back, sorry.
I'm saying,
going back to that, there's an interesting cartoon going around on Twitter actually about the first human that lands on Mars goes into a cave and finds a human skeleton there. What 3 words are script on the walls?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That
that's
kind
awesome.
of goes down. What 3 words would they write on the walls if that happened?
I was here.
Yeah.
Gilroy was here.
Or help me, please.
It could be just one word, and this is something that's common in social media now. Is when somebody when you put out a post, or sometimes when I put out an announcement for a live stream, somebody will jump on the chat even before it starts airing and write first.
Ah,
Yeah. That's true.
This was the first human. The first of how many, though? That's the question.
Mm.
while we're talking about Mars, do you all realize that as far as we know, Mars is completely inhabited only by robots?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting.
Crazy.
The only planet that we know of that's inhabited by robots, right?
Right.
Interesting.
I don't know. Ask the android in your pocket.
Yeah.
Which planet is inhabited
Oh,
by robots?
this planet's inhabited by robots,
Yeah.
not dominated by robots
No,
yet.
not yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's why I was going to say technology, guys, is beautiful, and the way we're evolving is beautiful. But don't forget Terminator 2, man. Don't forget Terminator 2.
So jumping back on the idea of nukes, and we were talking about the idea of threat, and then with this next topic that we're going to discuss, we'll start to wrap it up. So start to formulate your final thoughts. But so what's the more likely scenario? That humans, with their weapons of mass destruction, and we're constantly developing more. In fact, some believe that this UAP report that just came out is another way to get more funding, to be able to develop new technologies, to do more destruction, right? Is it more likely for humans to destroy this planet or all of humanity, or is it more likely that the UFOs, whatever they are going to get tired of us, they're going to get sick of us and wipe us out? So, Jamie, we'll start with you on that one, since you're the newbie on this topic. I want to get your raw, unfiltered, uninformed, or less informed,
Uninformed is right.
less informed idea, and then you guys can also chime
And then the smart guys can talk. Okay.
in.
Um,
I didn't
you
mean
know,
to sound like that, man. You know I love you, Jamie.
I hate to say it after all the peace and love and good feelings that I have, but I think we're going to do it to ourselves way before anybody else comes in. You look at things as simple as forest fires, and how completely simple it is to divert resources to clean things up so that these forest fires don't happen, or to simply a human wrap a chain up so that it doesn't drag on the ground and cause sparks. And time and time and time again, I think last year we lost 10% of the world's sequoia trees just in fires. So don't even put into the chemicals that we dump and the smoke in the air and all that stuff. The likelihood that aliens are going to come over here and get peeved off at us because of whatever we're doing is vastly shadowed by what humans can do to themselves for power, for land, for arguments that they can't even remember what it was about so long ago, but they're still fighting it. That being said, I hope that if we ever do get to that point, that if there is somebody out there looking out for us, that they would have the ability to step in. And yeah, you're right, Harbinder. It could be any other thing. I mean, I just think that it's going to be us if it happens. God or whoever, I hope it never does. I hope at some point we figure out, this whole kerflunkle, that I won't say the word for, could have been vastly reduced if people would just be nice to each other and just put your concerns over mine. And then it comes down to something as simple as that thing over your face because it makes you feel comfortable, even though it makes me uncomfortable for 10 minutes in a store. And so many people just can't do that. But anyway, so that's my answer. I think it would be us before it would be aliens.
All right, John, do you want to chime in? And then, Richard, I'll let you finalize that, and then we'll go to your final thoughts. So, John, go ahead and jump in on that.
I don't think we need to worry about the aliens, really. I think we, like Richard or like Jamie said, sorry. I think we need to worry about ourselves. We need to learn about ourselves. We need to learn how to respect ourselves. The aliens, the UFOs, the extraterrestrials, whatever these things are, have been here, like I said, forever. They still haven't wiped us out. And in my opinion, for some reason, and I don't know what, but we are like a valuable resource to these beings because they continue to interact with us. They didn't just come and go, and they weren't here for a few years and left. They've been here this whole time. And I think they have there's some kind of connection that we're not noticing, some kind of value that they see in our species. So I don't think they'll destroy us or wipe out the planet because it might be their planet, especially if they live in the ocean, right? What we were talking about earlier. So we have to worry about ourselves. We have to expand our ideas, our concepts of our own species in order to evolve to the point to be able to grasp this topic. Because at this point, we're having this conversation 70 years in, and we're still gripping to this idea that it can't be possible. What could it be? What is it? And it's really just painted out throughout time and history. So I think we'll be fine. We may need to protect ourselves when we have close encounters, like I was saying earlier, because maybe they don't have our best interests in mind. But just like Richard said, when you step on an anthill, you're not thinking about the ants, but we are the ants, and we're thinking about them stepping on the anthill. But the thing is, they're not going to step on every anthill. There's a bunch of anthills all over the world. And so we need to just be aware, be conscious, have an open mind, understand that there's good and bad in all of existence, and continue forward to try to figure out how we can use this to evolve our species to understand that we don't need boundaries and barriers. We need to all work together, like you said, Andrew.
And if that's the case, we don't have to worry about the UFOs. Do we need to worry about ourselves? Do we need to figure out our own mess and stop ourselves from destroying this planet?
Imagine if we get the technology, man.
Yeah.
Tied to these craft, and we turn it into some kind of weapon. Maybe we'll think at the moment that we're doing it, like when they created the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb. Maybe they were like, oh, good. Now we have a step ahead of our adversary, our enemy. Their adversary and their enemy ended up being just a kid, a kid from another land or a person from another border or a person with a different culture. And if we figure out how this technology works, let's hope that we can be evolved enough to use it to something positive, even though I doubt highly that if we figure out how it works, it won't somehow get twisted into some kind of weapon just because that's how we are. We create the fire and we create the arrow, but we should really worry about our approach,
John.
bro.
Yeah, for that reason right there is the idea of these things being gifted to humans. It just really, really makes me dubious of that hypothesis. I have a hard time wrapping my head around it to begin with, but the idea of them gifting us this technology,
no,
it just doesn't hold weight in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I don't think they'll gift us the technology. That's what
But
I keep saying.
This is a theory that Jacques Vallée and Grant Cameron have been pushing for a while.
Yeah, totally.
And,
some of the biggest minds in this field have been pushing that idea for a while, and I think first we have to be evolved. I don't think that they should be. I said this before, like with such intelligent beings or an intelligent species, with the technology they have and how long they've been interacting with us, you'd think they'd have formulated a way to make open contact with us where they don't have to worry about us taking their craft or maybe they do, but they have a plan for it, And I think, unfortunately, when I really sit down and try to wonder about it, I think they do worry that if we get their technology, we could one up them, because a lot of the stuff that they do when they're not in those craft is very ridiculous. It's very clunky or weird, or they just don't know how to interact with our species really. So they also seem weak, frail in most cases. Their minds are powerful, but their bodies are not. Is what it seems like. And so there might be this, this whole idea of like, oh, but they could wipe us off the face of the earth. I think they might see a challenge if we get that technology. We're so violent and so think of like the strongest soldiers and the strongest black ops team. Think if they had like some technology, some alien technology to help them, like who knows what could happen. We might just be bred warriors in our blood because we learned how to hunt, we learned how to farm. We sort of came out of the mud and just grew on this planet against some of the biggest beasts that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I think they might think about that, but I also think like we have to figure out our approach to this, because at the end of the day, you and I and all the normal people, none of these secret projects or black budget things that are going to try and get this technology and figure out what to do with it. We need to figure out our approach, because who knows, sooner or later we might come face to face with something that we never imagined.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Richard, not your final thoughts, but your address the question: nukes and humans being in control of their own demise. Is that more likely than the UFOs wiping us out?
Yeah, I believe it is. We will do more damage to ourselves than anybody else will. Going on what John said, there's that saying, isn't it, that all knowledge is good. It's just the purpose it's put to that's evil.
Yeah.
And we are experts at getting that knowledge and twisting it. So, yeah, I think we're more of a danger to ourselves, especially at the moment. The nukes are out there. Everybody knows they're out there. To a certain extent, is it going to happen soon? Maybe not. But at some point, rogue state's going to pop up, and Pakistan and India, classic examples. We talked about that before. It only needs a match to set the tinderbox on fire. And before you know it, we'll be firing stuff off even before we know exactly what happened. And we're a species of not learning from our past. We keep making the same mistakes time and time and time again. And at some point, we're going to make the mistake that puts us over the edge, basically. And so, yeah, I think we don't have to worry about the aliens. I firmly believe they're probably around. I believe they've probably visited and taken people, and they've had that interaction. Are we to worry about them right now? Probably not. We're more of a danger to ourselves than anything else. So,
all right. Well, Jamie, try to bring the mood up a little bit, man. You're a really positive person, and
Well,
I just want to leave this conversation on a high note. On some positivity, and I could throw my final thoughts in there, but I really want this, to be you guys' opinions. But we're talking about nukes, we're talking about UFOs, we're talking about the end of the world. Is there any hope for humanity to overcome our own adversities, to stop us from destroying ourselves?
I do. I feel that the answer is tacos.
Okay.
Because tacos
I
make
love
everything
tacos,
better. Okay. So
I want to go eat some tacos now.
No, I mean, we could sit here and like we talk about. I mean, it's direct. It's all of that being said. How many times have we been at that brink, at that line, and someone somehow brings us right back? And so I'd like to think that even though we do make the same mistakes twice, three times, multiple times, that when it comes down to it, that we're gonna survive. We're gonna keep going. I would love there to be a way that we could get rid of nukes, but as a realist, it's not going to happen. You know. Um, that being said, all we can do is hope, and I know hope and prayers are overrun, but to have faith that someone's going to realize in India or Pakistan or North Korea or any of these other places that here, that someone's going to realize, yeah, this nobody's going to win if that happens. Because it's not just us firing a couple missiles back and forth, because as soon as it gets started, it would get started everywhere. So we just need to all chill, sit back, have a couple tacos. You can go with classic Coke, you can go with cerveza, whichever, it goes, and just bring the world down and let the aliens take a couple of taco stands and bring it back. And then I think the problem solved. How's that one?
Good point. Good point. Good sentiment. That's a way to leave it on a high note. John, go ahead. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I didn't want the conversation to sound so negative, because the real reason why I look into this topic and have looked into it for so long is because I believe that reality is much more beautiful than people think it is, right? And if you just pay attention and you step back for a second and you look at the grand scope of things, you start to see how beautiful it really is. And there's so many questions that are unanswered, so many viewpoints, so many things that we need to still challenge. And the one thing I think understanding that we are not alone in this reality or the universe, and that we're being visited and have been visited, will do for us is open our minds up, maybe break down those borders. Maybe we won't have to worry about India and Pakistan and all these countries with nuclear weapons, because we'll all have, it'll be everybody's nuclear weapons. Which is, I think it's strange to look at the world that way. But if you told people 100 years ago to look at the world we're living in right now, they would think it was strange. So what we need to do is stay focused, stay grounded, and remember, this topic is not just about flying saucers. It's about the future and the past, and helping the kids of tomorrow maybe evolve and understand that we are all one species. So
good point. Richard, you're a teacher, man, and you're talking to the youth and the future generations of this world. What do you say to them, man, to give them hope and to know that they're going to have a tomorrow and they don't have to worry about these aliens or these nuclear weapons or future weapons that are even more destructive? How do we overcome the ability to destroy ourselves?
Yeah, I like the way you put it about having a renaissance. I think it's the perfect way. We had the Dark Ages when the Romans left England, and basically it was that void that was left by this civilization that disappeared. And it turns out that the Dark Ages weren't really that bad. We still had, England always comes through everything mostly, I think. But then we had the Renaissance, and then we had all the science and technology, and now we've had that period for a few hundred years where we've been in the sort of doldrums, so we say, with that windless environment where no sails are picking up anything. And now I think we've got to that situation where we're starting to pick up that wind again, and we're starting to drive forward. And if we can get through this renaissance, then the futures could be really, really bright. And I know the word utopia has been brought up, but it would be lovely to think that in 50, 100 years' time, with the forwards as well, with the vast science that's being pushed forward at the moment, that if we can unify all the laws that we've got, and I think we're very close to it, we can open up the whole universe to ourselves. And then we're going to have to look at what alien species have got, and we're going to have to go out there. And I know it sounds really Star Trekky, but we're going to have to start interacting with them, because we're going to be on the block. We're going to be playing with all the big boys then as well. So I think we can have a really good, bright future if we can just get through this bit.
I think we're on the path to Star Trek future. Honestly, I think that's the direction that we're going. And so I've talked enough, man. I want to give you guys, okay, if you have something final to say, go ahead and say it, but give them your contacts again on your way out, and let's wrap this up. Go ahead, Jamie.
All right, well, all I've got to say is we will never be one until we get rid of the Swedish fish Oreo. because that is going to there's right and there's wrong. Okay, so let's get past that, and then maybe we can move.
I don't even know what the heck that
Guys, this
is,
has
and
been,
I
I
don't
mean,
want to
really
look at it.
expanded.
So.
Good, don't, because it's an aberration. It's like putting cilantro in an Oreo.
Yeah.
But I so felt like the outsider coming into this, and you guys have, all three of you have just really expanded, my brain, and thank you for putting up with me. So anywhere out there, you guys can find me at Fave5 from Fans. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and on the gram, as Lily hates me saying. And I love talking to people. I love interacting. And reach out to me. And just remember, never trust an atom, because atoms make up everything.
Wow, that's a good way to end it. Yeah, and please check out Jamie's podcast. He's also a member of the SIP Network, the Slightly Irregular Podcast Network, which is what Dead Hand Radio is part of.
And thanks, Coco. She's been giving us some good love there.
Yeah, she has. Thank you, Coco. And so, John, how can people get in contact with you, and when's your next episode going to drop, brother?
Anybody just search up the Undead Gaucho, like it says up there at the top. And I'm the only Undead Gaucho on the whole planet, probably. So you'll find me in 2 seconds. And my next episode, I mean, I hope I can get it out next week, because I did one yesterday. So after doing this, I think I'm going to take a break for a second, try to recoup and figure out something new. Maybe I'll create something during the week. You can check out, I make artwork. I do a lot of stuff. So you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I'm all over the place. So
you talk about your T-shirt store. Can people buy your T-shirts still?
Oh yeah, you can still get some of my artwork at Redbubble. If you just put Undead Gaucho in Redbubble, you'll find it. I've got NFTs. I created a NFT
we'll have to talk about that sometime.
Yeah. It's called Martian Token, and it's basically my art. And what I did is I tried to create like a collectible that people can trade and use. And 10% of that goes to UFO Disclosure DAO, which is something I also launched recently, which is a decentralized autonomous organization that's run on blockchain with the idea that it can give grants to UFO research. So if you become part of the DAO, that money that goes from the DAO goes to the researchers that put in a request for a grant. And it's something new, so I'm still in the learning process, but I thought it was something good to sort of steer us away from waiting for the government to give us answers. Maybe we can use the cryptocurrency community and fund some great projects and get answers on our own. But yeah, I'm done.
Fantastic,
it was great.
Man.
It was great to talk to you, Jamie. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Andrew, for inviting me on, man.
Absolutely. Very much appreciate you being here. Your leadership in the UFO community is much appreciated. Huge respect to you, man. Keep doing what you're doing and expanding the opportunities for others to follow in your footsteps, man. You're awesome.
Indeed.
Richard, please let people know how they can contact you, and if you want to throw out a phone number for people to call you over in the UK, whatever. How can people reach out?
Yeah, well, I'm not on FaceAche, unfortunately. I'm only on Twitter. So if you want to get hold of me, I'm at RJH_397. Yeah, talking to you two guys has been fantastic. John, I've got lots of respect for you, mate. You've done some really good stuff. And Jamie, I am seriously going to try one of those Swedish Oreos. I'm sorry.
Oh God, don't do it.
I seriously like food that's out there, and that's just pushed me in the right direction.
No, what have I done?
You've got to come to England and try some jelly deals. Trust me, it's the only thing in the world.
Okay.
What's that? Is that guy's name Andrew Zimmerman that goes around eating the weird foods?
Yeah.
Goes around. Are you a fan of his, Richard?
Yeah, I love him. I think he's great. But
Yeah.
we've got some weird food in this country, but jelly deals are the ones that a lot of people just turn their heels up at and go. So, but yeah, it's been fantastic, and yeah, lovely to speak again, Andrew. It's been lovely to speak to you.
Oh yeah, you guys are always welcome back Anytime. Love talking with all of you guys. The people in the chat room today, you guys were awesome.
Yes.
I'm so grateful for you guys being here and participating in the conversation. If I missed your comments, I apologize. It's just because I was getting into the conversation with these brilliant minds that I'm surrounded with.
And me.
Well, all of you guys, man. You're a highly intelligent individual, Jamie. Plus, you're always a positive force. You guys know how to reach me, andrewhall.com. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, but I'm easier to get in touch with on Twitter or through my website. Throw me an email. Thank you all for being here. Been an awesome conversation. I know we got a little bit off the topic a few times, but UFOs and nukes, the real threat. And I think the real threat is we are the biggest threat to ourselves. And
Yes, sir.
we need to stay focused on
Definitely.
that and work out our problems. So
Yeah.
thank you all. Have
Thank
a great
you.
rest of your day. Have a great
Cheers.
evening.
Cheers.
And I'll catch
Bye,
you
guys.
soon.
Thanks.
Take care.